So I want to talk about some seismic changes that have been going on in the world, particularly around employees, which is affecting organisations. So you'll be aware of the Great Resignation and the impact that's had. You know, staff have just had enough. We've heard that they're leaving, and that organisations like yours are scrambling to try and find new talent. More recently, there's the conflict around the world has just caused markets to become more uncertain. And what happens then is investors and shareholders are suddenly going to their companies they're responsible for, their organisations, saying, "Ooh, we just need to be a little bit more cautious." So we're seeing hiring freezes, we're seeing retrenchments taking place. So holding on to staff has become even more of a number one priority for most organisations. We're asking them to do more with less. Now, historically, if we were trying to solve that problem, we'd be increasing salaries, we'd be maybe looking for a bonus or doing team building to build morale. But companies are doing that, and those that are still doing that, they're misinterpreting the problem we have here. It's not about money. It's not about titles. It's about recognizing and supporting those individuals as human beings. That's what they want. They're saying to their organizations that work is part of my life, my whole self. I choose to work here. I am choosing to work here. And in return, I want flexibility, I want growth, I want development. So retention starts to happen when organizations start to realize that a person in their company is not their employee, they're choosing to be there. And when they start to treat them like human beings, like we do outside work, so we treat them as a whole person, we want to know everything about them, we want them to bring their whole self to work. When we start to think about their well-being as a whole, be it mental, be it physical, you know, when we think about their development beyond just their job, when the whole package is considered, then it starts to work. And future fit organizations are already doing that. They're saying bring your whole self to work. They're saying we want your curiosity, we want your entrepreneurship. You know, we know that that brings greater value to the organization, but we also know that to do that, we need to, as an organization, to let go of control a little bit. You know, more than a little bit. We need to trust you, because when we trust you, you start to innovate. When we trust you, you start to be agile, and only when you do that can staff start to feel empowered and do the best for the organization. If you've got an organization that wants agile ways of working, you can't do it unless you let go of control. You've got to start trusting. That's when all the innovation starts to happen. You get those deeper connections. You get greater loyalty. Improved information flow. The knowledge working space now requires that information flow beyond just what your system allows you to, or beyond the hierarchical passing down of communication, beyond that sort of official communication channels. It needs to happen and flow effortlessly. You know, companies then allow you to be yourself, and they become their whole self. They grow and change in different ways. That's the foundation for a future fit organization. So what's the starting point? The starting point is why we're here today, right? If organizations need to be empowered, if they need innovation from their people, if they need agile ways of working with distributed decision making, that means their team needs new skills. It means everyone in the organization particularly needs to be able to lead. Okay? Not just leading others, which is where we tend to focus on leadership development, but to lead themselves. That is mission critical. If you're asking someone to work in an agile way, if you're asking someone to be empowered, if you're asking for them to take on that responsibility for the dissolved decision making that you've given them, they have to be able to lead themselves. And it sounds really simple, but you don't see it in organizations because historically it's just been too controlling, hierarchical. We've looked for guidance from above. So leadership of self becomes critical. And that starting point then is your people's development. If you're doing all these new ways of working, you can't just wish that by putting a new process, putting a new system in place, that people are suddenly going to behave differently or have the skills necessary. You need to get them ready for the future demands of the organization. They need that skills. They need that knowledge. That's vital if you want to move into those new ways of working. And it's going to improve retention, because now you're investing in their whole development. You're going beyond just the skills needed to do a particular job, right? That's true leadership development. That's not just leadership of others, that's leadership of self. And that's the starting problem, the starting solution. The problem, however, is that organizations are getting it wrong. They're getting their leadership development critically wrong. It's still basing it on a foundation of old paradigms and ways of working with leadership development. And I'm not talking, when I mention old paradigms here, I'm not talking about something 25, 30 years ago. I'm talking 5 or 10 years ago, okay? Now, leadership development needs to be based on a foundation of leader of self, because everyone needs to lead. The other problem organizations have when they're doing their leadership training is that it's ad hoc, it's skills-based ad hoc training, where it should be focusing on human and future skills instead. We tend to see a push towards practical skills in leadership development. And I'm not saying you've got to ignore all that. Some of those are quite critical, particularly when you're starting to lead departments where you need to know budgets and you need to understand those things. But there is such a lack of focus on human and future skills that it just doesn't allow it to do it. We've got to remember that the way an organization works, it's hugely integrated now. It's systemic. You've got to build those layers over time. And that's what organizations are getting wrong. Ultimately, the training needs to develop and address challenges of the future. It needs to allow its people to keep up with the pace of change, to be constantly adapting, to balance that long-term and short-term thinking, to adapt continually to new technology that is coming in and changing things. They need to empower people to be able to do that. And that's what's going to lead to the attraction and retention of staff as well. Ultimately, it does it by allowing employees to grow beyond just the functional dimensions of their role, the functional dimensions that their industry demands. It's starting to develop them as human beings. And that's the leadership development. That's the starting point now for the change in your organization. So, reason we're here, Greyfeather has this unique leadership development program, which we're going to be running you through over the course of the next year, throughout the entire organization, for everyone from start to the exec, okay? And it's going to create specific future fit leaders across the organization. How do we do that? So it's immersive. There's 5 streams. Okay, we start off with leader of self. We move to leader of an employee. That moment you have to just look after one person, then leader of a team, leader of a business unit, leader of a department, and then leader of a business unit. And each module builds on and progresses the previous set of skills and knowledge, and ultimately brings about leaders that are well-rounded, emotionally mature, and skilled. It brings about those deeper connections that we need, remember, for that information flow, for understanding. And it allows people to bring their whole self to work. And the organization sees the tangible benefits from that. If you're doing all of those, it enables that empowerment that we need. It enables the agile ways of working. It brings the greater curiosity, which leads to innovation. And it allows for accountability and understanding. It lays the foundation for where your people want to work, where they want to be, where they want to hold their hand up and say, I actually want to work there as part of my life. As senior executive exco leaders, it's a place you want to work just as much as everyone else. It also allows those individuals to fulfill their own personal calling, because now it's their whole self coming. And when they're doing that and it aligns with the organizational purpose, you start to see amazing things happen beyond just the organization and in society.